Okay, let's put ourselves back on the battlefield. Okay. Talk to me about the Ukrainian military's incursion into Kursk. First of all, top line, what do you think their actual objective is in doing this? And B, from a strategic point of view, an operational point of view, where are they going with it? Can they take and hold territory for an indefinite period of time, or are they viewing this as a short-term effort?
I don't believe this is a short-term effort. Now, why they're doing it, that might still be up in the air, but there might be a strategic reason why. So at first, I kind of thought, all right, so these guys are going to go after the city of Kursk, or they're trying to capture a rail line, or they're trying to capture a nuclear power plant that was fairly close by. But that never really materialized. And I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to force the death or capture of conscripts. Now, for the longest time, there's kind of been this unwritten rule in Russia, mainly from the upper middle class in Moscow and in St. Petersburg, who've said to Putin, do whatever the heck you want, but don't you dare touch our kids. And conscription touches kids. If you recall, back during September of 2022, Russia had a general mobilization, some general conscription. And you notice they ended that really quick. They relied on Wagner. They relied on emptying prisons. They started paying more and more money to people in the eastern half of Russia who are very poor to join the army as kontraktniki, as volunteers. And they were fine with that. But by capturing these conscripts, one thing it might show is a weakness in the Russian military, that they might not have as many troops as the West would like to think they have. So Russia might have to undergo a general mobilization. And that could see the downfall of Russia or at least the downfall of Putin, because people don't want Russia to touch their kids. It might be a lot harder to get out of conscription. So I believe the Ukrainian objective was to force a general mobilization or capture as many conscripts as possible. So that way Russia would have to face the consequences of putting untrained conscripts close to the border.
Yeah. Well, we've seen some reporting that indicates that, just recently, in the past week or so, that they've moved the Russian military has moved some 30,000 troops. They've redeployed to have to deal with this situation in Kursk. I take your point. There's been a lot of pushback internally, I think, within the Kremlin and from the business side, from the oligarchs in particular, about the idea of a general mobilization. And if you think that, go back to, the Afghanistan occupation days with the old Soviet Union and the impact that eventually the families, the mothers had on the general mood and morale and direction of that war. So, it's possible. Do you think there's also a possibility here that what Zelensky's thinking or what his military is thinking is that, look, let's take and hold some territory. Let's round up as many POWs as we can, and that gives us leverage for a negotiated settlement?
It certainly could. This will end in a negotiated settlement. Nobody's going to drive to Moscow unless Putin is overthrown and someone else is installed who wants peace, which I don't really see that happening. And no one's going to drive to Moscow and there's going to be a surrender on a battleship like in World War II. That's not going to happen. And no one's going to be able to drive to Kyiv and there's going to be a surrender in Kyiv. There will be a negotiated settlement. The question is, do you do it from a position of strength or do you do it from a position of weakness? And it's certainly possible that Ukraine could have taken this territory, because the idea of having Russian territory in Ukrainian hands, that's the non-starter for any kind of negotiation. So they will have to give back some territory in order to get Kursk back.
Yeah, and I think that there's a concern that the way this all wraps up is that the territorial lines look very similar to prior to this invasion by Putin. And you end up 3 years on and people say, what was that all about? Because Russia still has Crimea. They still have, occupying parts of eastern Ukraine. Maybe they claw back some of that territory for Ukraine. But I think the frustration will be immense if that's what they end up doing. But I agree with you. I don't see an outright victor here. I just see if they don't have a settlement, just years more of this same World War I like slow movement or advancement on either side, and I don't see that does the world any good. Right? I mean, I think they've got to negotiate from a position of strength. The Ukrainian military does, the government does. They have to make Putin feel some pain in order to get something that they can then sell to the Ukrainian public. That's just for what it's worth. That falls in the category, Ryan, of for what it's worth.